In today's show, the Trail Blazers send Anfernee Simons to Boston and land Jrue Holiday in Portland. Seriously, there is so much to unpack from this one. Welcome to Locked On Blazers. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Trail Blazers, your daily Portland Trail Blazers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, world? It's your past first point guard and Trail Blazers reporter, Mike Richmond. You're listening to another episode of Locked On Blazers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, available wherever you get podcasts and also on YouTube. Thanks for making this show your first listen, coming at you each and every weekday, Monday through Friday. So make it a part of your daily routine. Make it your first listen. Tell your friends to do the same. It's Locked On Blazers, your team every day. In today's show, we are talking about a stunner. The Blazers, to kick off draft week, send Anfernee Simons to the Boston Celtics, along with 2 second-round picks in exchange for Jrue Holiday. For real. I did not believe it either. We're going to get into all of that. There is so much to unpack from this one. Why did they do it? What does it mean? Where do they go from here? How does it impact their immediate plans, their future plans? We'll get into all of that in today's show. Before we dig too deep, today's program was supposed to be about the NBA draft. I promise you, I would dig up all the scuttlebutt. And full disclosure, I had recorded a podcast. It's about 8:30 p.m. I'd recorded it. I was sitting at my computer, and I looked at my phone, and Jrue Holiday was getting traded to the Blazers, and I deleted that one. So we're not going to talk draft stuff today. We'll do that tomorrow. We're going to get into this one because it's just such a huge, stunning deal. Here are the full details, as reported by Jake Fisher of the Stein Line. The Blazers are sending Anfernee Simons and 2 second-round picks. The deal was first reported by Shams Charania of ESPN, if you're into that type of thing. And usually I give credit for the first who reports this, so I'll do it here. Shams first reported, but Jake Fisher has the details. The Celtics are getting a 2030 second-round pick from the Blazers. That one via the New York Knicks, and a 2031 second-round pick, which is from the Blazers, in addition to Anfernee Simons. That is Two seconds, and Anfernee Simons goes to Boston in exchange for Jrue Holiday. My initial reaction to this is I think Jrue Holiday is probably the best single player you could acquire in a straight across Anfernee Simons trade. I think that's probably true based on kind of what I guess are the general perception of the combo guard trade market is, what we've seen other similar players either be traded for in the case of maybe like a Terry Rozier or not be traded for in the case of a Tyler Hero. Like these aren't... The Anfernee Simons archetype did not appear to have a bunch of value, and I'd say when you are attaching multiple seconds to get a 35-year-old Jrue Holiday, it suggests as much. Jrue, as recently as last season, was freaking good. Like, he just turned 35 at the beginning of June. Happy birthday, Jrue Holiday. Of course, Jrue returns. Welcome back, Jrue. He was the centerpiece in step one of the Damian Lillard trade. Every surprising trade Joe Cronin makes includes Jrue Holiday's now pulled off 2 absolute stunners. The last time I was mowing my lawn, actually, no, I think I was mowing my lawn during the Damian Lillard trade request. I don't know what I was doing when Dame actually got traded. In any case, as recently as last season, in the 23-24 season, Jrue Holiday was really freaking good. Second team all defense, received Defensive Player of the Year votes. In last season, he missed 20 games and he just struggled. He just had a down year. He had been really, really good and he had a down year, undeniable, in his age 34 season. But he has been a linchpin, the key piece, traded to multiple teams that have immediately basically won championships after acquiring Jrue Holiday. You trade for Jrue Holiday, you win a title. That's the math. The Milwaukee did it in 2020, and they won the 2021 championship. With Jrue when he was first team all defense, and again received Defensive Player of the Year votes. The following year, he's second team all defense, receives Defensive Player of the Year votes. His third season in Milwaukee, he makes the freaking All-Star team, first team all defense. 23-24, he gets the summer of 2023, he gets traded to Boston. they win the title. Second team all defense. Then last season he was injured. He dealt with mostly dealt with a couple things, but it's mostly a right shoulder thing. Right shoulder impingement is what they kept calling it. But he had a finger injury that kept him out for a little bit, and then he had a hamstring injury that sidelined him during the playoffs. Last year, he averaged 11 points, 4.3 boards, 3.9 assists, shot 44.3% from the floor. That included 35.3% from three, which is well below his career average, 37%, which was obviously higher prior to last year. But, 90% free throw shooter. He just wasn't as good last season as he's been. And he'd signed a contract extension that has 3 years remaining on it. He will make $32.4 million this year, $34.8 million in 26-27, and $37.2 million in 27-28. That's a lot of money, but it's not like relative to the cap. It's about 20% each of the years. It's 21%, 20.5%, 20%, depending like that projected into those future cap years because we don't know exactly where it will be. That's starter money. 20% of the cap is like starter money. But the what you're banking on is that Jrue Holiday at age 35, 36, and then 37 in his upcoming 3 seasons is a starter. It's like a quality starter because that's what the Blazers are doing here. They traded for a starter, right? They didn't trade for... This follows a pattern. Joe Cronin, I mentioned on a previous show last week, Joe Cronin doesn't trade for draft picks. He prefers players. He's now traded for Jrue Holiday twice. And when he flipped Jrue Holiday the second time, he traded for players, not draft picks, players, not expiring money, players under contract. This has been his MO, players under contract. That is who Joe Cronin trades for. If Jrue Holiday is the player he was in 2023-24, the Blazers got an awesome basketball player. If last year was the beginning of a decline for someone who's 35 years old, it becomes a little dicey. But like I said, I think this is the best player you possibly could have traded and made in an Anfernee Simons trade. Or acquired, in an Anfernee Simons trade. And real quick, I don't know if this is the place to do the sort of Anfernee Simons bon voyage thing or whatever, but 7 seasons in Portland, drafted in the 20s in 2018, the 24th overall pick in 2018, a pretty darn good outcome for someone you draft 24th overall. Grew up from a kid making the transition to high school to a grown man here in Portland, Oregon. Had his best years under Chauncey Billups. I think the last 2 seasons he kind of maybe plateaued or showed some of his limitations. It'll be interesting to see that in a system like in Boston. And the Celtics are likely to not have Jason Tatum for a big chunk, if not all of the season. Where he fits in a system like that, and where he fits next to better players when he's clearly the 4th best player on the floor at some times, or I guess without Jrue and without Jason Tatum, he's more like the 3rd-ish, 4th-ish best player on the court, depending on how much you like Al Horford and how healthy Kristaps Porzingis is, I guess. But it'll be interesting to see what Anfernee Simons becomes. I guess if you listen to Locked On Celtics with John Corrales for more on that, and maybe John and I will do a crossover here in the coming days. But if you were just looking to trade for the best possible player, one of the best defenders of his generation, Jrue Holiday's great. In terms of overall resume and overall body of work, he's great. He's a career 37% three-point shooter who is littered with all defense teams. He's made 2 all-star teams. The last 2 teams who've traded for him have won the freaking championship. But I think that's where I'm running up against it. Why did the Blazers do this? If you are angling to improve the team, there's a fairly decent bet if you get a healthy Jrue Holiday, he will be more impactful towards winning than Anfernee Simons. And is entering his physical prime. He's 8 years younger. It's very different. It's a very different thing, right? Maybe 9 years younger. It's a different thing. But my initial reaction here is not just that this is probably the best player you could have traded for. It's so why Jrue Holiday? Why now? this is the Blazers hitting the gas. I've speculated a bunch on this particular program. It's like kind of how and when do they decide to hit the gas? At some point, you have to try to be competitive, right? And it's very clear that on the evening of June 23rd, the Blazers decided to go ahead and jump into that competitive window. This is a team that wants to be good. You don't make this trade if you don't want to be good. This is a team trying to compete. Why the hell are they doing that? What's going on? What becomes of Scoot Henderson? Let's talk all about that in the second segment. We got more to unpack from this from a couple different angles. Join me there, won't you? First, though, let's talk Monarch Money. Do you ever look at your bank account and think like, where did all my money go? Where hath it gone? Well, with Monarch Money, you can keep track of it. It's your personal CFO. It's giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. What I like about Monarch Money is that you can plan long-term and short-term savings goals simultaneously. So like not only do you get rid of the multiple apps, because Monarch Money allows you to check your finances, track your spending, and like see all of your investments. So if you have some investment accounts, if you have a mortgage, if you have a checking account and you have to click around a bunch of different apps, Monarch Money brings that all into one place. And then you can say, okay, I want to plan for a summer trip I'm taking at the end of August. So I want to have some extra spending money for that. But I also want to plan for 2032 because in 7 years down the line, I have a goal to have this much money in my savings account. This is important for me. Monarch Money can help you plan short-term and long-term goals side by side. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. And the code is LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. All right. So why did the Blazers do this? My initial reaction is, I don't really know. I honestly, I don't get this trade. Not that I love Jrue Holiday. I've deeply appreciated him, but as I've mentioned, like this is the last two teams that have traded for him have been go for it teams, right? The Bucks as the last piece to a championship, the Celtics as the last piece to put them over top for a championship, the Blazers to win a 45th game. It is not the same thing exactly. I will say this as an important caveat. The last sort of trade that I thought, hey, this is probably a good deal, but I don't understand it from the Blazers' perspective was the Deni Avdija trade. I probably still don't understand the general construction of it, but I will say this: Deni Avdija was the Blazers' best player. They nailed. If the point is talent acquisition, Deni Avdija is very talented and he's under contract and cheap and blah blah blah. Like, yeah, if this is a talent bet, and this is a talent bet, Jrue Holiday's probably better than Anfernee Simons, or at least like has a strong track record of being significantly better. The question is like the money owed to him and whether that's that's an issue. The Celtics saved money by doing this. They saved about $5 million off their tax bill, and they're a team that's obviously has a very expensive roster, and there's been a bunch of reporting that they were going to shed some money, and Holiday and Porzingis were the guys they were going to try to shed. They get Anfernee Simons on an expiring deal, and the Blazers inherit Jrue Holiday with $100 million left on his contract. This is a move that you make if you want to go win. Like Jake Fisher of the Steinline reported that the plan for now is definitely for Portland to keep Holiday because they want to compete. I don't think you make this move to flip Holiday because I don't think he has this like juicy trade value at his age and price tag. Is he tradable? Yeah, I think like eventually, but if what you get is Anfernee Simons in 2 seconds, that's kind of that might inform you the general trade value. Could the Blazers do something like that on the back end? Yeah, I think so in general. And if Holiday's really good, obviously, like if he bounces back and has a bounce back year and he's like a all defense performer, then it is like that the calculation totally changes. But you make this trade to try to go win, right? You don't make this trade like there is no world in which you make this trade and can like couch it as asset accumulation. That's nonsense. This is a win basketball games on the court kind of trade. And Jrue Holiday fits the plan, at least, or the Blazers' like general identity. They can roll out some lineups that are going to be very, very unfun to play against. But this is the type of move, and I kind of feel the same way with Denny Avdia. And again, like I was maybe wrong on the overall sort of talent bet, right? But my confusion stems from the same place. This is the type of move that you make if you want to win games, if you want to go chase it and win basketball games. The Blazers are committed to winning more games. They won 36 games a year ago, and they didn't really tank. There was never a time in the season when they intentionally lost games. Like maybe you could argue some of like the final 4 or 5 games of the season, they tanked the Chicago Bulls game, but then they turned around and won a game on Sunday against that was a Friday, and then later that weekend they won a game against the Spurs, which if they're really committed to tanking, that was an incredibly important one to lose. The Spurs, you remember, have the second pick in the NBA draft. So, but like the Blazers kind of played it straight up last year and won 36 games and finished 11th in the West. And then they traded for Jrue Holiday. They're hitting the gas. This is the gas. I've been wondering when they're going to hit the gas. This is it. This is a team committed to winning. That to me is puzzling. But I do think Jrue Holiday fits, like I said, fits what they want to be. He's a great defensive playmaker. He can play. He's probably not like a pure point guard and never has been. He's point guard size and guards point guards, but you need every team that has employed Jrue Holiday at a high level has had other primary creators next to him. Like he can do some point guardy stuff, but you need other guys to sort of handle the ball and get and be initiators, because having Jrue initiate on offense every single time down the floor, you're just not going to get the most out of him. You want him to be a secondary guy. That's the best way to do it. But like, you know, the Blazers will have Shaedon Sharpe, and he had some initiating duties, and I think he's in line to get more of them. I think the Blazers should explore that. Denny Avdia had the ball in his hands a bunch at the end of particularly the second half of last season. The Blazers should absolutely do more of that. And Jrue Holiday as a spacer, career 37% three-point shooter, had a down year and shot 35% from three, but has a track record of being a good shooter and a guy who can comfortably play off the ball. He fits that. He fits the defensive ethos. He's a good team guy. He's a great dude, like just in terms of like a person. He's a wonderful citizen of the world, like an easy dude to root for. I've always enjoyed Jrue Holiday, right? Like easy guy to root for. If this was Jrue Holiday, like, there was a time when Jrue Holiday played with New Orleans, and the Blazers were maybe linked to flirting with trading CJ McCollum in some sort of Jrue Holiday construction trade. And at the time, a Jrue Dame backcourt, when the team is like a playoff level team and trying to level up and take that step forward, I love that move. That was also 8 years ago. This strikes me as a little bit weirder. This strikes me as weirder because of the age, because of the money, and because of at some point they needed to hit the gas. At some point you can't just kind of be in sort of rebuild mode forever. But one of the important parts, and I think we've seen this with teams, is it's hard to build into being truly competitive without a frontline player that defines your identity. The Blazers have awesome collection of role players, but not a frontline player to define their identity. Perhaps that's the next step, and perhaps there are more steps, and that's how you get there. But for a team to get more expensive and older at this stage is incredibly strange. And it's incredibly strange for Scoot Henderson, isn't it? Because the whole idea of an Anfernee Simons trade construction was to give Scoot Henderson a chance to spread his wings. That's not what the Blazers are doing. He can play next to Jrue. You can share the backcourt so much easier with Jrue Holiday's archetype if you're Scoot Henderson than you can with Anfernee Simons' archetype. You can get away with so much more because of Jrue's defensive ability. You aren't putting out two small guards that are just going to get picked on. You're putting out Scoot, who has some real defensive deficiencies, with one of the best defenders of the last decade, right? But it doesn't exactly carve out a big minute role for Scoot Henderson. It kind of puts him in the same role. In year 3, he's a backup again? That's a bit puzzling to me. Let's talk more about that. I remain puzzled. Even if I do think there is obvious basketball stuff that helps, I remain puzzled by it. I do. I remain a little puzzled by the trade. Join me in the third segment. I'll talk more about the puzzling and kind of where the Blazers stand after this trade, obviously with more moves come, and if nothing else, because it's friggin' draft week. Join me in the third segment. First, though, let's talk about OpenPhone. If you run a small business, you are just always trying to chase down and make sure that you connect with customers. So every missed call is money left on the table. Think about it. Last time you had an urgent need, maybe for like a plumber or a service provider, if the first person you called didn't answer, did you wait? No. Probably not. You moved on. That's why your business could use OpenPhone. OpenPhone is the #1 business phone system built to streamline and scale your customer communications, all from an app on your phone or your computer. It lets you manage business calls and texts from a single app. So right there, it makes your personal phone into your business phone without mixing those streams. Plus, there's the shared inbox feature, which allows your team to jump on any conversation instantly without missing a beat, so everyone's on the same page. Plus, they got an AI agent that'll handle after-hour calls and can answer common questions of your customers and capture leads so you never miss a customer. OpenPhone is offering my listeners right now 20% off your first 6 months at openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. That's openphone.com/LockedOnNBA. And if you have existing numbers with another service, OpenPhone will port them over at no extra charge. That's OpenPhone. No missed calls, no missed customers. Today's show is also brought to you by the good folks over at FanDuel. The NBA season may be done, but the summer sports season is upon us. We got WNBA games. We got a cajillion baseball games every day. We got golf tournaments. We got high-stakes footy, soccer action wherever you're looking. Plus, FanDuel is the best way to make every game even more exciting. You're already following the action. Why not try to add a little juice to it? With FanDuel, you can get in on the game while your friends are getting sunburned. You could maybe win some money. FanDuel's super easy to use, and when you win, there's fast payouts that can get your money quickly. You can make same game parlays, or you can watch a preseason bet ride all the way to the very end. It's a fun way to get in on the action. And if you're new to FanDuel, new customers can bet just $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet wins. Open the FanDuel app today or visit FanDuel.com to get started. Still a pass first point guard. Still Mike Richmond. You are still listening to Locked On Blazers. I mentioned Scoot Henderson. In my mind, the whole idea of an Anfernee Simons trade, the appeal of an Anfernee Simons trade was to say, okay, now in year 3, Scoot Henderson, he's still got a bunch of warts, right? But the Blazers have never, they tried to commit to him early in his rookie year and he wasn't ready. He really struggled that rookie season. Last year, he played fewer minutes. He started fewer games. He got less opportunity because again, because of the health of the roster, and the team was successful in the second half of the season, and they kind of committed to the plan. And Anfernee Simons was in front of him, but Anfernee Simons on expiring contract and all these things. It's like, hey, they're going to trade Anfernee Simons this summer, and they're going to make room for Scoot with an Ant trade. Because when they trade Anfernee Simons, while they can prioritize veterans, they'll prioritize veterans that kind of make sense off the bench and be more comfortable in a bench role. And I cannot imagine that Jrue Holiday coming over from starting on a team that had one of the best records in the NBA, 2 years removed from winning a championship and being an all-defense member. Like, there is no way that he sees this and says, I would love to come off the bench with 3 years remaining on my deal. I'm cooked and deserve to and want to be in this sort of mentor role. He's not 40-year-old Chris Paul, who's amazingly still playing. He was pretty freaking good a season ago. There is a world in which Jrue Holiday is a perfect mentor for Scoot Henderson. Let's be totally clear about that. A perfect mentor for him, right? Because he is a dude who plays the right way. He's a dude who's been a get in where you fit in type of guy, and get in where you fit in and make multiple all-star teams, make teams winners, and use your strengths to make teams champions. Like, hey, Jrue, you're not quite a point guard. Yeah, sure. I'm going to play 15 years in the league as not quite a point guard and figure out how to be excellent, right? Like, he's like a combo guard dream, a guy who can guard both spots, who plays bigger than he is, who is like the sort of platonic ideal of a role player. And by role player, I don't mean a lesser player. I just mean like if Jrue Holiday was your best player, you're not very good. And if Jrue Holiday is your third best player, you win the damn championship. That's kind of what it's looked like over his last 5 seasons. But so there is a world in which Jrue Holiday, good dude, good basketball player, NBA kind of like figured out the art of being who you are in the NBA, playing to your identity and being excellent. He's the perfect mentor for Scoot. And like I said, they can play together a little bit, right? They can play together. It's so much easier to have that be the backcourt. Like Jrue can play next to Shaedon Sharpe. He can play next to Scoot. Like it's so much. Jrue he's the Druth, man. He fits much easier next to both guards. And that there is some appeal there, right? There's some appeal there. But he's going to play 30 some minutes a night. They didn't make this trade not to have him be a big minute guy. Right now, this is obviously like you're listening to Tuesday, June 24th show. Like if I told you the Blazers opening night starting lineup was Jrue Holiday, Deni Avdija, Toumani Camara, Jeremy Grant, and DeAndre Ayton, would you be surprised? It's kind of the group they leaned into when their season started really taking off in January, except you sub out Anfernee Simons for Jrue Holiday, which would mean that in this world, year 3, Scoot Henderson comes off the bench, and year 4, Shaedon Sharpe comes off the bench, and Donovan McClingan in year 2. I don't think he's ready for like a 35-minute a night role, but he's also a backup, right? Yeah, like that strikes me as a little bit odd, but it does strike me as playing some lineups that can really defend. They can really defend. I think they'll miss some of Anfernee Simons' shot creation, but that was always going to happen if they traded Anfernee Simons. They were always going to miss some of his ability to create off the pick and roll and all of those things. He's been a better shooter than particularly just off the dribble shooting than Jrue, but Drew's not a bad shooter like that. They're not taking a huge hit there, but it's a very different kind of shooting. It's not the same thing as Anfernee Simons. It's not all 3-pointers are created the same. They are all created equal if they go in, but they're not like the way you get into them is not always the same, and the way you get into them kind of defines how you get traded, how you get defended a little bit. They're going to miss that, but they could put out some elite defensive groups. Like I said, this is a hitting the gas trade. This is a trade that they made to go win games. I don't really understand why they want to be a team that wins 47, 48 games next year, like as sort of a top end hope. But that's what they want to do. That's what this is. That's what this move is. And so the rest of their moves as we head forward into the offseason should, I guess, inform kind of how far in they're willing to go, because the Blazers got more expensive, they got older, but they made a move to their identity here. It strikes me as in this way. I have been thinking about the Blazers in a way that they don't think about themselves. They're going to commit to Scoot. They're going to go young. I said on the show a bunch of times, I'm not sure if they have an appetite to take a step back. That was my read on the organization. But this is so different. This is an appetite to take a step forward. The question is how far forward? And do you get caught in this position where you're stuck in the middle because you are decent? They could put out some darn good defensive lineups. If Deni Avdija continues to improve and Toumani continues to improve, and you get DeAndre Ayton was mostly bad last year, except for an 8-game stretch. But if you get a healthier version and better version of DeAndre Ayton for a longer stretch, and Don McClingan off the bench continues to improve, and Scoot Henderson isn't miserable being stuck as a backup, and he takes a step forward, and Sharpe does, you're a pesky group that was pesky last season. A lot of, not a lot of that, but a fair chunk of that was like taking care of business against bad teams in March and April. But like if the Blazers take care of business all year long against teams they're better than the teams which they are better than, that's like a path to 41 wins cleanly. My question is, what's the path beyond that? I would say my general feeling about this trade as we wrap up here is I don't hate it on its face. I don't hate it. I am confused by it. I'm just confused by it. This is such a stunner. I think it has a fair number of outcomes where it is indeed positive because Jrue Holiday is good. And it has a fair number of outcomes where Jrue Holiday is old and well compensated, and the flexibility that you may have been able to find at some point is now kind of tied up in this swing for it, hit the gas move. But I think what the key part for me to remember here is that the Blazers fancy themselves as a team that's going to win a bunch of games. So what I should be judging them on is their next moves that allow them to win a bunch of games. Not my personal preference or my personal vision for what's next, because the way I have thought about it is not the way they've thought about themselves. So while I don't need, like, whether I agree or anything on this trade is not particularly important, because it will have no outcome on how I analyze or talk about the team. I might look back and say, hey, that was weird and we all knew it was weird at the time. But I think the way I will judge what's next is how deep are they willing to go? If you're trying to be good and you're trading for a 35-year-old, how good do you want to be? What are your next moves and how far do you push it in? Because, like, to get the most out of this Jrue Holiday trade over the next 3 seasons, they need to be highly competitive. He's 35, 36, 37 under contract for 3 more years. You got to be, to make this deal worth it, you got to be really good during this stretch with him on the roster. So the next question for me is not like, how do they find minutes for Scoot Henderson? It's how do they win basketball games and make this trade make sense? Because the next things they do need to make this one, the clarity, it needs to be extremely clear why this was the path. Or they just need to win a whole freaking bunch of games, and then it'll be obvious. If they win a whole bunch of games with the current roster intact, I'll be relatively surprised. I find this trade truly baffling, but I'm willing to hold out some judgment until we see many more moves the rest of the summer before I declare myself completely puzzled. And quite frankly, me being puzzled doesn't make this trade good or bad. It just makes me, when I looked at the news on my phone this evening, confused, puzzled, and puzzled is about where I stand now after 30 minutes of talking you through the logic with it. Come back for tomorrow's show. We were supposed to talk about the draft today. We didn't. We talked all about this. We'll talk about the draft tomorrow. Everybody is mocking Carter Bryant to the Blazers. We'll talk all about it. Come back and join me. What a freaking week. Welcome home, Jrue Holiday. Tell your friends about the podcast wherever they get podcasts and also on YouTube. If you just listen to this one, share the link with a pal. I appreciate you listening. I'll talk to you soon.